Racist, ignorant, egotistical, annoying, rude, blind, self-centered, insecure, misogynistic, problematic, ugly, retarded, mentally unstable, stupid idiot, asshole, fuckface, megalomaniac. These words are verbatim, used by our community to describe Donald Trump and his supporters. We, as a community, think of ourselves as very open-minded, tolerant, and accepting of diversity. But the second that we encounter an idea that is slightly conservative, homophobic, or sexist, and I'm guilty of this as well, if I hear something that is rude, insensitive, or offensive, I'll immediately react to that. But when we hear these things from the other side, we tend to shut down those ideas. It's not a secret that there is a green school mindset, or bubble, as we like to say. We view the bubble as a sort of safe haven, where like-minded thinkers and activists work together towards a common goal of sustainability. We don't think of the bubble as an echo chamber, a closed system in which beliefs are amplified and reinforced through repetition and agreement. Opinions are formed in pieces. It's something that your teacher says to you in class. It's an article you half-skimmed on Facebook, a documentary you watched. We take in the views and perspectives of the people around us, and the more people who agree, the stronger those beliefs become. As a community, I would say that we have pretty strong beliefs when it comes to things like climate change, politics, and Donald Trump. And we tend to react very strongly when we encounter ideas that go against our beliefs. So I didn't get into this project because I'm a big fan of politics, because I'm not. I got into this because I hate conflict, and there's been so much of that recently. A year ago, I was feeling confused and frustrated. Everyone around me, who were mostly progressive, left-leaning Democrats, couldn't seem to come up with a clear answer to the question, what in the world would make someone like and vote for Donald Trump? So one day I thought to myself, why not just ask the people who did and who still support him? So that's what I decided to do. In March, I went home to America to interview people who I assumed would have very different social and political opinions from my own. My first stop was Iowa. When I arrived in Iowa, my host family picked me up from the airport and drove me to McDonald's for a quick dinner before going to a drill team dance show. And as we pulled into the drive-thru, they asked me what I wanted to order. And I had to decide in a split second. Did I really want to tell these people who I just met that I have been a vegetarian for 7 years? I decided to go with my gut instinct, which was to lie through my teeth and say that I wanted a cheeseburger. They ended up getting me 2. And that was the very first moment that I wondered, what the hell have I gotten myself into? The second moment was about 12 hours later, when I woke up on the very first morning and started crying because I was genuinely scared for my life. It was clear that I was no longer in Ubud. The house was decorated with 3 deer heads and 1 moose head. I learned that my host family were pretty conservative Republicans who worked in agriculture. And they told me this loving anecdote about how some Chinese nationals tried to break into their facilities and steal their GMO technology. I woke up remembering that the daughter said their family loved guns. And, in fact, had a secret gun room hidden somewhere inside the house. I called my parents sobbing, saying that I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. But as the week went on, I found that most of my initial fears were pretty silly and based on assumptions that I made. They voted for Trump, but didn't think of him as a very good person and wished he would stop tweeting. 2/3 of those I interviewed were concerned about climate change. But in their minds, we don't need to be as concerned about being overheated by 2030 if we get bombed in 2020. After being taught extensively about gun safety, I picked up and shot my first gun at some cardboard in a field, which, I'll be honest, was actually pretty fun. I could have very easily judged them for how much soda or meat they consumed that week. That entire time I was in Iowa, I did not eat a single vegetable. But I knew that my carbon footprint, which involved thousands of miles just for me to get to Iowa, was probably much worse. My host family, who are kind and generous to me, aren't bad people, just because they voted for what they thought was best for their family. They are business-minded, country music-loving, tax-hating humans whom I promise to go back and visit one day. In St. Paul, Minnesota, I lived with a pretty liberal family. The mom was a teacher, the dad was a cop. And he managed to arrange a ride-along for me because he wanted me to see how police are generally treated with very little respect. I helped search the streets for casings after shots were fired. I visited a wounded male in the hospital who shot himself while trying to rob another. And I sat on the perimeter as the police were trying to catch some drug lord in a high-speed car chase. I noticed almost every single case involved a black male. I also learned that police are pretty against Black Lives Matter because they view it as being anti-police. I tried to talk to some of them about the issue of police brutality, but understandably, they were pretty touchy about the whole subject. But I did manage to talk to one officer if she felt more scared when the person involved was black. And she said that, no, she wasn't. St. Paul is actually where Philando Castile, one of the names in Black Lives Matter, was shot in 2016. On my last day in Minnesota, I went to March for Our Lives, which is the student-led demonstration to end gun violence. And I knew that something within me had changed when I was excited to have found the one conservative, self-described libertarian I met in St. Paul. As I stood at the anti-gun protest with the Trump supporter who was protesting the protest, I realized that he didn't see himself as the evil, ignorant one. And he wasn't pro kids dying in school shootings. He just didn't think that banning guns was the solution. I was pretty surprised that he was willing to talk to me so civilly for such a long time. And I definitely did not agree with everything that he said, but as I stood there, I could begin to understand the matter from his perspective. My street in New Jersey looks something like this. But when I arrived in Texas, I saw signs like these. I was talking to my friend and host, Reagan, who used to go here, about the differences between Green School and Catholic school, when I thought of an analogy between Christianity and veganism. In her first couple weeks of school, she was forced to watch an abortion video, which afterwards made her throw up. And later that week, I was talking to her mom about animal slaughterhouse videos and whether everyone who eats meat should have to watch them. People who make these videos on animal slaughter, on abortion, and on war are just very passionate people who want others to know and to be more aware. However, their methods and their rhetoric elicit a lot of backlash. By saying things like, meat is murder, abortion is murder, one of two things will happen. You get them to convert out of guilt or fear of burning in hell, or you alienate them so much that they will turn against you and your message. What I've learned from my trip is this: if we aren't willing to listen, then we are condemning ourselves to a bubble of ignorance, where we assume that just because someone is not on our side means that they're wrong, uninformed, corrupt, and evil. Yes, there are extremists on either side of the political spectrum, but we view any deviation from our own views as being extreme. We need to know that people who disagree with us can have genuine and honorable reasons for their beliefs. And it's so easy to dismiss people as being ignorant, racist, sexist from far away. And that takes a lot less effort than seeing them as the individual human beings that they are, which you'll realize if you make an honest attempt to understand their perspective. But we can't do that. We can't understand the other by staying in a world where we are told that we are right, we are enlightened, and that we have all the solutions. Because that means that our ideas are never being challenged, and we aren't really listening. Tuning out disagreeable ideas doesn't make them go away. Plugging your ears to hate speech or sheltering your eyes from discomfort doesn't make it disappear. And this doesn't only go for conversations about politics. It's any conversation where you find that you can't seem to see eye to eye with another person. I think the world of our community. I think that we are a community of passionate learners who want to make an actual impact and actual change in the world. But all of us need to step back and reflect. The world is not painted in black and white. Recycling does not make you a good person. Just like how eating palm oil does not make you a bad person. Activism is not about waging war on the other side of humanity. This journey has been uncomfortable, unpleasant, terrifying at times. And I've learned more about myself in my 5 weeks in the US than in my 2 years in Bali. I've sat through conversations that upset me. I've nodded along to things that offended me. But sometimes, in order to really understand, you just have to shut up, nod your head, and eat a cheeseburger. Because there's going to be a moment when you realize that you understand a version of the world that's not your own. And knowing this, learning this, has helped me become more forgiving, less bitter, and less angry about the state of the world. We don't have all the solutions, which is okay. But we need to be open to all kinds of dialogue, because through them, we can actually learn a lot. All it takes is a little humility, some bravery, lots of empathy, and, of course, love. Thank you.